Hi, Tom Cole, the coach for Buckeye Cable and BCSN, and welcome into another edition of Sports Flash. And this is really an honor and a privilege for me today because we've got a great professional writer, baseball and football, Jonathan Knight. But Jonathan, you've written a book that is extraordinarily interesting to me. And by the way, your reviews are incredible. Oh. I read all the reviews. And normally, even when you write a great book, there's somebody saying,
sure,
you know, well, it wasn't really that good.
There's always one, right?
Your reviews were incredible. The book is The Making of the Movie Major League. Mm-hmm. And it's one of my all-time favorite movies. I've probably watched it 8,000 times on Buckeye Cable. It's one of those movies, Jonathan, that when it comes on at 2 in the morning, you know you've seen it really literally for 300 times. But I can't watch a little bit of it. I get sucked in every time.
You cannot turn, if it's on, it's on.
And I watch it turn it off from beginning to end,
exactly.
And I enjoy it almost as much, you know, each time. So what took you to the level, being a great writer that you are, that you wanted to write a book about the inside making of this film?
Well, I think you nailed it really with that description there. I think for you, for me, for so many people, this is more than a movie. This is an experience, and it has been for 26 years now since it came out, and it's sort of transcended. I think certain movies have that capability to become something else, and Major League has become that. And I think big reason why is that because it is so specifically about one team, one long-suffering team, still long-suffering team, that we really do use that movie as a catharsis, as a healing process, something to cling to when the real life Indians let us down. You know, it's so interesting to me, Jonathan. I think we were chatting off there. It's so relatable, you know.
Sure.
It's
so relatable in that everybody in their life struggles at their occupation or what they're trying to do. And if maybe an occasional break, something goes their way, some of the planets align, and suddenly somebody that struggled is put in a position to be successful, and they start winning, and success multiplies success. And I think when you watch that, you know, the movie Major League, you go, well, yeah, the guys did it. You know, right. It's that kind of feeling, isn't it? It
is. It's the American dream in a way. I don't want to be trite or overexpand this, but it is a microcosm of everything that I think we look for in a good story. And it's that sense that a bunch of guys, a bunch of misfits, a bunch of cast-offs were given an opportunity, and look what they did with it. I think that's something that we all aspire to do. Whether or not we accomplished it in our lives is another story, but it is something that we aspire to do and something we look for in a good story.
Jonathan, how ironic. We're sitting here at Forrester's on the river, which is an incredibly beautiful place. Great food, great service, and they're kind enough to let us do the interview. But right across the river from Forrester's is Fifth Third, the Mud Hen Stadium.
Sure. And
one of the best AAA stadiums in America. We were chatting about that. But in the movie, one of my heroes in the movie, Lou Brown, who's the manager, becomes the manager of the Indians, was an ex-Mud Hen manager.
Yes.
He's a used tire sales guy.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, it's just all so iconoclastic that, you know, it all fits together. It's
and
very
how
cool.
Brilliant that Toledo gets a call out in the movie. I mean, it's just great. And you imagine, plus just that verisimilitude that you get into with the movie, and that with David Ward, who wrote and directed the movie, being an Indians fan and a guy who grew up in Ohio, those little details about the Toledo Mud Hens. What a great thing to drop into your movie that a guy sitting in a bungalow in Hollywood wouldn't get that. He wouldn't be able to get that reference, and to be able to tie that in and bring in some of that Ohio flavor. Just one of countless great touches that are in that movie that allows it to endure.
Well, David Ward, as you well know, the screenwriter for Major League, and a brilliant, you know, I think sometimes when they make these sports movies, they fluctuate between, do we go just so far over the top that it's ridiculous and people are going to watch it and go, oh, come on, you know, that's not going to. He kept it in the middle enough that you said, hey, this could be, and he gave you the ultimate compliment, because David Ward said, you know, he said, Jonathan wrote things about my movie and my screenplay that I didn't even know.
Yeah,
How does that make you feel?
What a compliment. I mean, my gosh, that's from the master. And this is, you know, and again, for me personally, this is a guy who, from the time I was old enough to read credits in a movie and recognize what roles were in movies, and I'd see this guy's name, I was like, this guy wrote and directed this movie. He has to be the coolest guy in the world. And, you know, 25 years later, he says something like that about me.
Makes you feel good.
Incredible. I mean, worth 2 years of work, worth everything, just for that comment.
What I find also kind of ironic, Jonathan, is that as talented as David Ward, I mean, everyone struggles at some time. He was struggling a little bit before he got to Major League and in the movies. You know, things weren't going, weren't going the way that he wanted them to go. So how ironic is he puts together a story about guys that are struggling.
Right.
He was personally struggling,
right.
and it comes together on the screen, and it comes together in real life for him. Life imitating art,
exactly.
art imitating
That's
life.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And he was very much at a crossroads in his career. Of course, he launched his career writing The Sting in 1973. So right
which
off
is
the
incredible.
rip, which is an incredible movie in its own right, of course, and wins an Academy Award right out of the chute at the age of 28. And not that he really struggled, but over the next few years, I mean, and he admits that he spent the next several years trying to write another Academy Award-winning movie, which you can't do. You can't sit down to try and do that. So he reached a point in his career where he's like, okay, I need to write something that I have fire in the belly for, that I feel in my heart, that means something to me. And part of that was that underdog story that we talked about, and how that resonates with people. So he recognized that, and he kind of wanted to do a story like that. And nothing was closer to his heart than the Cleveland Indians, his beloved, downtrodden by this point, by the 1980s Cleveland
Cuyahoga
Indians.
Catching on fire every summer.
He had lived through all of that. The 54 World Series, exactly.
Chief Wahoo out in center field by himself, beating the drum.
So he had gone through all of this, this long trek through the wilderness for 30+ years with the Indians, and he reached a point where he said, you know what? The only way this team's going to win something is if I make a movie about them winning it, and I make it happen. I let you win. And that's basically what it was. And so it was the ultimate case of fantasy baseball. He's saying, the only way you're going to win is if I get you there. He got him there.
That's incredible. Also in the sports movies, Jonathan, I find that they're hard to make because they get the Hollywood actors, and nothing pejorative, but they're not athletes.
Sure.
And there's nothing worse in a sports movie when you see the Hollywood actor who never caught a baseball, never put on a shoulder pad. I mean, you can name the movies where these people, but in Major League, hey, Wesley Snipes is athletic.
Right.
I mean, he runs, looks, swings. Behringer looked like a catcher and had the movements of a catcher.
Right.
Charlie Sheen threw the ball. For a Hollywood guy, he threw it pretty well.
Yeah.
And is this true that Sheen went on steroids to be able to pitch? He did. His arm was, bothered him because he had to throw so much?
Well, that was actually two different things that he did, and he talks about this in the book, that he did first of all take steroids primarily to bulk up, and to set the stage a little bit. Steroids was not really a part of our world in the 1980s. We didn't really know what steroids were the way that we do now.
Sure.
We were still a couple of months away from Ben Johnson in the Olympics getting his gold medal taken away. So steroids was still sort of a unspoken, there was not the faux pas about it. So he was taking it basically to bulk up, and he wanted to bulk up for the role and be able to put some more juice on that fastball so that it did look more believable. So the way he put it is he basically made a sacrifice of himself, of his body, for the good of the movie. Now, as a part of that, then, as you mentioned, his arm began to hurt, his shoulder began to hurt when he's throwing. Essentially, he's throwing like a regular major league pitcher. He's on a schedule where there's so many pitches a day over the course of a week. He's getting shoot again. So he's on painkillers on top of that. So and a line he used, he told me, how I remembered a line of dialogue, I have no idea, because there was so much chemicals flowing through his body at any point during the shoot. It was a bit of a wild summer for Charlie Sheen.
Jonathan, you know this movie inside out, the making of it. Give us a nugget or two that, we don't want to give away the book. The book has got incredible reviews. So anybody that likes baseball, anybody that's liked Major League, liked any of the characters, you got to run out and get Jonathan's book. It's great. But give me a nugget or two that surprised you in the making of the movie.
Well, I think the overarching thing that really surprised me is how much the people who are involved with the movie still love this movie. I mean, we're sitting here talking about it like the fanboys that we are, and that enthusiasm you see that same enthusiasm in Rene Russo, in Wesley Snipes, in Dennis Haysbert. It's really amazing that you would think that actors just, it's a job, I did that for 3 months and I moved on to something else. And that's not the case with this movie, that they all have a real appreciation and a real love for this movie, which is why I think I was able to talk to everybody. Everybody wanted to talk about it, which was surprising. I did not expect that to be the case. And the book is peppered with all kinds of little things. One of the things that it does go into detail about is the twist ending that was changed at the 11th hour, in which Rachel Phelps, the villain of the movie, of course, reveals that she never intended to move the team to Miami, as was her plot all along, that she was basically pretending all this time because this was one shot. She'd inherited a bankrupt team.
Right.
She had one shot. If they had one more losing season, she was going to have to sell it and the team would move. And she said, I have 1 year to do this right. And she really was very cunning and understood baseball and how it worked and was able to recognize talents in these obscure players that other teams had cast off, that they didn't appreciate because she had no money. She had no choice.
In a Billy Bean Moneyball.
And if this sounds familiar, it's Moneyball. She was playing Moneyball.
Right.
So I kidded David Ward that basically you coined Moneyball before we had the phrase, before Billy Bean came along, before Brad Pitt came along. You sort of immortalized that on film before they did. So that was interesting, that whole story and that ending. And that ending is in some ways more satisfying because it does like, oh, okay, it's a little more of akin to The Sting and the sort of the twists along that way. But when they showed that ending, the original ending to test audiences, they hated it.
Yeah.
And you can understand why. You don't like to find out that Darth Vader was just pretending to be a bad guy.
He's really a
good guy, and he's going to help you.
That's a tough turnaround.
Understandably hard to jump on that bandwagon. So they had to very quickly go and change that ending and delete the ending and reshoot a couple things for the end. So yeah, that was really interesting to see how that worked and how that played out.
The thing that's so amazing to me about the movie, Jonathan, is I went to school and college, and we were chatting off air with a lot of kids that grew up in the Cleveland area, and they caught in that movie the feeling of the city. There's a real feeling. Cleveland's a great town. They've gone through a renaissance. It's an incredible town. But at that time period, there was a level of frustration. Still exists a little bit with the Browns, obviously.
Yes.
But they caught that feeling. The Cuyahoga on fire, the Indians losing. What's going to plague? Pestilence. What's next for us in Cleveland? And they caught that in the movie, which I thought was a palatable kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's, again, credit David Ward. And especially you see it in that opening montage with the Randy Newman song about the river catching on fire and the
scenes.
Randy Newman? Randy Newman, and that's, again,
Burn On, Cuyahoga,
brilliant.
Burn On.
So people think that song was written for the movie. It fits so perfectly. It wasn't. It existed long before. But just that whole opening montage captures that flavor. And there's where you see this is written by a guy from Cleveland, from Ohio, who understands this wasn't just a guy who wrote a movie about a bad baseball team and said, what teams are going to be? Oh, let's make it about the Indians. No, this is a guy who understood it. And that perfumes the entire film. And I think that's another reason why it resonates today.
No question. When they're duct taping the prop on the plane, you say, well, okay, I'm with you. And I can see it. Jonathan, you've written an incredible book. How do people, I know Amazon, what's the best way to get it?
You can get it on Amazon, you can get it at Barnes & Noble. You can read excerpts at MajorLeagueBook.com. There's some excerpts there, but you can get pretty much anywhere.
The making of the movie Major League. Jonathan Knight, you're a great writer. What's the next book? You got a next deal?
I'm germinating right now. There's a lot of ideas kind of floating around. I'm trying to strike that balance between recharging my batteries after this one, because this took a long time and took a lot of energy. But at the same time, my internal clock's like, okay, time to get going on the next one. So trying to balance that between figuring out what I'm going to do next.
Well, let us know when you have the next one, and we'll be back with a camera. You're a great writer. It's an incredible book. Thank you, John.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Tom Curley Codes for Buckeye Cable and BCSN.